Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Welcome everyone in the chat. Good to see you guys and any channel members or moderators out there. We have an amazing show lined up for you guys here today with author and host of the Secret Teachings radio show, Ryan Gable. But a quick reminder, super chats and super stickers are available and will be read out live during the show. If you have any questions or comments that you would like addressed by me or my guest, that is the best way to get your comment or question seen. And a big shout out to Teresa for the $5 super sticker during my show with Clyde Lewis last week. That one kind of slipped by me there, but I always do my best to acknowledge the people that send in super chats or super stickers or even a PayPal or a Buy Me a Coffee contribution. So thank you, Teresa. Appreciate your support of the show. And also PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description and are a great way to help support the show and my work. And also Ryder Ranger channel memberships are available and are a fantastic way to help support the show monthly for less than a cup of coffee a month. And if you become a Ryder Ranger channel member, you'll get access to bonus episodes, and there will be a new Ryder Ranger channel members only episode dropping this week on Friday. So keep an eye out for that. But most importantly, if you'd like to contribute but can't, you can always share the video out, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment. Hitting the thumbs up button lets YouTube know that you want to continue to see my content and my videos, and leaving a comment helps boost engagement. Even if it's just emojis, please drop a comment. We are in dire times right now where the algorithms are not doing us any favors. So thank you guys very much. So with that down, we have returning guest, author, and producer of the show, The Secret Teachings, and good friend, Ryan Gable. Welcome back to the show, my friend. It's good to see you.
You too, Ryder. Always happy to be here with you.
Man, and are you ready to kick things off old school? We're going to go old school, Raised by Giants, with some metaphysical and speculation and theory. My friend, you ready for that bad boy? Oh, we're going to talk about some past lives, some reincarnation. But before we get into that, just a reminder that both me and Ryan Gable will be at Contact in the Desert this year, May 30th through June 3rd, 2024 in Indian Wells, California, for the Big Daddy, the number 10, the X 10-year anniversary. And you can get tickets now, on sale tickets. And if you use the promo code EARTH10, you'll get 10% off that ticket price. Just a reminder for everyone, we will both be there. Clyde Lewis will be there. We'll all be hanging out. So if you're in the area, come by and say hi. I think that they're also giving out free tickets for locals in Indian Wells too, correct?
That's what I read today on their social media page. You can come for free for a couple of days. The whole thing, but it's like 1 or 2 days.
Not that VIP dinner though. You can't be getting that VIP dinner.
Some VIPs can't even go to that dinner. So that's years in the past. I'm sure they fixed that.
I wonder if it's anybody that lives in. Is it anyone that lives in California, or is it just people that are local to Indian Wells area?
Well, it's not just anybody in California, but I read, again, I don't know because I don't work for them, but I read something about if you're in Indian Wells or in the surrounding towns or cities, I think that qualifies you.
Cool. Well, if you're in the surrounding areas of Indian Wells, come through and say hi. I'm pretty sure you can get free tickets for that event. Check the Contact in the Desert social media pages, because that's where I saw it today, actually. So, Ryan, what do you think about the idea of past lives and this reincarnation? Well, we spoke a little bit about reincarnation whenever you were on the show last time with Wayne Steiger in our little mini roundtable, but we didn't really bring out past lives too much. And I think the concept and idea of past lives is a really interesting concept. Not so much the past life concept that people in the community use to like bolster themselves up, like that they were the past life reincarnation of Jesus or Muhammad or like Moses and all that. I'm talking about like what seems like legitimate past lives, where young children will, go to their parents and they'll see something on the screen, or they'll get really emotional when they're looking at history books or whatever and be like, I was that guy. I think those are the real interesting ones. What do you think about it when it comes to that?
I've heard those stories before. I've seen a documentary on that one time about the kids. I've never talked to any of those people, so I don't know for sure. I don't know the families or the people that have had kids that have claimed that, or how exactly accurate it is. I would assume that if there are people that actually, young people, kids that actually have these memories and they can say that they are this person or that person and they can to some extent prove it, that's a weird thing for a kid to do if they were to claim that. So I'd say that there's certainly a field of investigation there which is perhaps beyond the scope of what we can understand, that fits into our sort of three-dimensional five perception reality. But I think that, like when we talked on your last show that I was on about something like reincarnation to me, first and foremost, and this idea of past lives, it's almost like what modern physicists say about energy, right? That energy is not something that can be destroyed, it's only something that can be transferred. So I kind of think of a past life or something like reincarnation in a very similar way. And in fact, a lot of our modern scientific, well, they're usually theories and formulas, but most of our modern scientific ideas, they're not necessarily facts, but our theories and formulas are all sort of based around the idea of metaphysical concepts that, well, ancient cultures have, and we have those preserved in stories and myths. But ancient cultures told those stories 100, 200, 300, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and so on years ago. So, and those get passed down through the ages. And as we start to understand the world more quote unquote scientifically, we realize, oh, maybe our ancestors were trying to preserve some sort of what we would call scientific, technological information in stories and architecture and things like that. At least that's just kind of the speculation. So it's like when you look at elements. I use this example. You have elementals, you have spirits of the elements, like you have the air spirits, fire spirits, earth spirits, water spirits. Today we just call them, well, we call them elements. We call them nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. And 500 years ago we called them something else, but we're talking about the same thing. And I think that's my point, is that when scientists talk about energy transference, we talk about the soul, talk about the spirit, which are two different things. Maybe we're just talking about, with reincarnation and past lives, we're just talking about what modern physics talks about when they say, well, energy can't be destroyed. That would be my first thought. I also know that reincarnation is something that is not isolated to some new age idea. It's a very ancient idea. It's not just in, I guess you would say, a philosophy like Buddhism. Christianity, at the onset of Christianity, when it first sort of started to form as we understand it, there was the idea of reincarnation in Christianity. So even major world religions had some concept of reincarnation. And I would assume that, like with everything else, Ryder, when we look around the world, if you were to travel to major countries around the world, and then maybe even just small countries, and talk to groups of people with different viewpoints, like most people are probably going to have a totally different definition of reincarnation, past lives. Some might view it as almost like a necessity of belief, like it's just everybody knows that, and others might think it's crazy. But it's just like with UFOs. Before we can really get into the discussion, we have to sort of define what reincarnation or what any of these things really are. So I wonder what your take is on that. How do you define that?
Well, I think that it's interesting with the past life concept, because what makes it a past life in people's memory? Like, if you take into consideration like string theory, for example, string theory is like pretty much a theory that all, like, the past, present, and future is all happening at the same time, and every decision that you've made branches off into a different type of timeline, or a parallel timeline, or an alternate timeline. So just because you remember another life, why does it have to be in the past? Right? Could it not be in the future? Could it not be in a parallel timeline? Could it not be in an alternate timeline? Like, I'm trying to figure that out. Like, what about it makes you believe? Is it our linear time thinking, and that we're in this 3D physical reality right now, and we think the time only moves forward? Of course, it's all speculation and theory. That's pretty much what this whole conversation is going to be about, is speculation and theory. But do we refer to it as a past life because we're in this 3D construct now and we can only see time as linear, like time progressing forward? So therefore, if we remember anything, we automatically associate it with the past, when that might not necessarily be the case.
That's an interesting idea. I never thought of that. I think that genetic memory, as some call it, factors into this as well, because when you get intuition or when you have a deja vu, although we don't really know what that is, there's a lot of theories on what deja vu is. When you get sort of a memory, or you get sort of an idea of, hey, I've been here before, or I've done this before, or something is unfolding in a way that you felt that you've experienced before. I'm sure that there's a very basic psychological way to try and understand why you might have that thought, because there might be something that triggers a memory of something you actually have experienced in this life, but your brain gets confused and you kind of feel like, maybe I've been here before. Maybe you were there as a kid, you didn't know. Like, there's all kinds of factors that play into it, but I think what some call genetic memory, like the memories of your ancestors, if you will, that's kind of like past life, because you're remembering things, but they're in your genes, if you will, that your ancestors experienced. And maybe that's why, when people say, well, you have a fear of water, maybe that means you drowned in a previous incarnation. But maybe it's not so much that you drowned. Maybe it's maybe you have some collective trauma from your ancestors. Maybe they I'm joking, but maybe they were ancestors in Atlantis and they all died in the Great Deluge, and now you're afraid of water. My point is, seriously though, genetic memory, I think, is an instinct, and things like that, I think, is maybe a route to take when we look into past lives as well. I think that might be a really interesting field of investigation. So I think that that's a real thing. But then again, also just on the side of that, I think that, and I know that genetics isn't the only thing that defines us. I think geneticists say like 30% of our genes are really things that we get from our parents, our ancestors, if you will. And the rest of them, like epigenetics, the rest of them are things that we can adjust and change based on how we choose to live. So genes don't totally define us. And honestly, I think it's a very complex field, and it's borderlines on the metaphysical, I'd say the superphysical, and of course, what is basically just completely theoretical physics. It's like a bunch of different things mixed together. But I would say genetic memory is an important part of that as well.
Wouldn't technically reincarnation be having a child? Would you not be reincarnating a kid, like a child? Would that not be a form of reincarnation if genetic memory is, real? Which I'm pretty sure science has proven the fact that genetic memory, in some capacity, does carry on from family member to family member through birth and through carrying on your genes. But would that not be a surefire way of reincarnating, but it's just a smaller version of you?
Wait, say that again. You're saying birth?
Like having a child,
Oh, I see.
Would that not be like a form of reincarnation in itself? I mean, yeah, you might not, that other being, that child might not have your same consciousness, but it came from you, so that would technically be a form of reincarnation.
Well, you could think of it from that perspective, especially in the sense of like whatever that you teach your child, things you learned, but also probably things your parents taught you, and their parents taught them, and their parents taught them, and there's some aspect of that gets passed down through successive generations. So those are things that you learn, though. It's a little different than intuitions that you feel and you experience and you just kind of know. But I mean, yeah, in a sense, you could also, based on what the current scientific trends are saying, you could also take skin cells and turn them into sperm and eggs, and you can basically clone yourself with your own skin cells. And that's kind of like cloning, but not really like cloning, because they're not talking about doing it in a test tube. They're talking about like a woman can literally turn her own skin cells into sperm cells and basically clone herself within her own womb. it's a little different than cloning. So I think that's a little different than reincarnation, but I get the point of what you're getting at. Yes.
Yeah, it's just really interesting. I have this pretty interesting article here about reincarnation from NBC News. All right. Expert investigates 10-year-old's reincarnation claims. Ryan, a 10-year-old boy from the Midwest, believes he is the reincarnation of a Hollywood agent. Which, again, I think is really interesting because it's not like this super popular figure from history that several people claim to be reincarnations of. For as many people as claimed to be the reincarnation of Jesus Christ, we should all be saved by now, right?
Tesla.
Yeah, Tesla's a big one. All the saints have apparently been reincarnated hundreds and hundreds of times into different people, somehow all at the exact same time, which is really interesting. I want to know how that works. But for more than a decade, Dr. Jim Tucker, Associate Professor of Psychiatry at the Neurobehavior Sciences at the University of Virginia, studied the cases of children, usually between the ages of 2 and 6 years old, who say they remember a past life. In his book, Return to Life, Tucker details some of the more than 2,500 cases he has studied over the years, including Ryan, a boy from the Midwest who claims that he was the reincarnation of a man who died more than 50 years ago. That man, Marty Martin. Oh, man, Marty Martin was a former movie extra who later became a powerful Hollywood agent. The following is an excerpt from Tucker's book. In the chapter, he came from Hollywood. We were able to piece together a picture of Mary Martin's life, and we can compare it to Ryan's statements. In most of our cases, people have tried to see if a deceased person can be identified whose lives match the statement of the child had made. Here, there were only one guy, and Ryan could have been talking about because he had pointed to him in a picture. Yeah, that's like the common thing is like these children in the stories of this, like they're looking through history books or they're looking through something, and then they point at a picture of this of an individual, and they're like, "That was me," or "I'm that guy." Right? Because he had pointed to him in the picture, we weren't trying to see if there was anyone else's life who matched Ryan's statements. We were looking to see if Marty Martin's did. What we found is that through Ryan was off on some of the details, a lot of what he said was correct for Marty Martin, and had seemed unlikely that an extra with no lines would have danced on Broadway, had a big house with a swimming pool, and traveled the world on big boats, but Marty Martin did. Marty was born in Philadelphia in 1903. Ryan had talked a lot about his sister, who also mentioned another one, and Marty had 2 sisters. His mother had curly brown hair, as Ryan said. Ryan was much about right about dancing in New York, as Marty and one of his sisters went to New York to be dancers. He danced in various reviews on Broadway, and his sister became a well-known dancer there. I mean, it's kind of similar. It's kind of spot on, but like they're saying, there's some details that are like jumbled up and mixed up there. And then people could also say, "Oh, well, this boy just, had all the information in his fingertips, and then he just got on Google and started trying to figure out everything that he could about this individual, and then he would just tell this professor." It would be interesting if this was happening back in I don't know. 30s, 20s, 30s, or even
because you don't have access to all the info.
Exactly, yeah.
Is easily, yeah. Well, I would think too that if you are able to give an accurate depiction of your own life, that would kind of be a miracle. And it wouldn't prove anything, but like most people don't remember. I'm one of them. I don't remember everything I've done in my life. If you went back and looked at all the things I've done in 33 years, I'm sure there are things that people remember I don't remember. So if I was reincarnated in some little boy who was just born after I died, and he said, "Hey, I was Ryan Gable," and he recalls certain details, but not all of them. Like, I'm Ryan Gable, and I don't recall all the details of my life either. So I guess you could say that that's a possible way to interpret the points where he was wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then there's a story that I heard a really long time ago about this. I tried to look for it, but I couldn't find it because you know how Google is. They the articles and things are taken down all the time. But there was this article that I read a long time ago that talked about this boy that said that he was this gentleman in a past life. They contacted the family of the person, and then he went and met his
I remember
wife
that,
as a boy. Yeah, do you remember the story?
Vaguely, but I remember that. Yes, the details that you just gave.
It's wild. And then you also have strange things like Jim Carrey as well, like getting into the role of what was that actor's name?
Kaufman?
Andy Kaufman. Yeah, he got into the role of Andy Kaufman like so deep that seems like he legitimately believed that he was Andy Kaufman. And they brought Andy Kaufman's family to meet Jim Carrey on set, and they're like, "That's my son. That's him." It's weird. Like, I don't know what to think of that. There's a whole documentary, a man on the moon, or a man in the moon, or something like that on Netflix, where it really details all this. And it's like, man, like, are you able to channel someone like that much to the point that you believe that you're actually him? I mean, he took on all of his mannerisms. He took on all of his like social cues, like down to a T. I mean, I guess you could get that way with studying someone to a degree and like watching all of their, I mean, if you're a really good actor, you could maybe take on their personality. But the wild thing is they brought Andy Kaufman's family to meet Jim Carrey, and they were like convinced, like, this is our son. This is Andy Kaufman.
It's funny because these things today are things that are like you referenced the psychologist who's looking into these thousands of cases over his career. You got psychologists, you have scientists, you have mainline, I guess you could say experts, if you will, who are not theologians, they're not spiritualists, and they're looking into things that if you otherwise would bring up reincarnation or past lives in a conversation with common folks who aren't interested in that, more than likely they would tell you that you're crazy. It's some new age belief. It's not true. You're out of your mind. But we have psychologists and even physicists that study these kinds of things and try to figure out what exactly the origins of these ideas are, that finding out that they actually go back more than a couple of years. They're like thousands of years old, these concepts. And we try to apply modern scientific understandings to these more spiritual concepts that have really been the bedrock of a lot of religious philosophies, again, for thousands of years. So once again, what our ancestors, or at least what we think our ancestors understood or knew or taught or thought or wrote, etc., are things that modern science and modern psychology is helping us to understand, or at least they're trying to investigate these things from a more mechanical, three-dimensional way of looking at the world. I find that to be the most interesting because, 200 years ago, maybe 300 years, I don't know, just a thought. I wouldn't expect there to be anything other than belief invested in these kinds of ideas. But now it's like we can maybe try to prove them with computers and with computer models and with cutting edge psychological research and cutting edge physics and particle accelerators. And we can actually try to apply like hard physical science to elusive spiritual matters and figure out what exactly is going on.
Do you want to hear my super ultra mega woo-woo theory on what's going on?
Yeah, I would love to. Are you Nikola Tesla too, or?
Yes, I am the reincarnation of Nikola Tesla. I have given my information to build the integration machine, the time travel device,
the death ray. You got the
ancient
death ray.
Healing.
Bring the death ray to contact. I want to see it.
So, one of my original thoughts and theories surrounding this, and some people might remember it, but let's just take that everyone is telling the truth. Let's just make that a base thing. The people are telling the truth, that they really do have memories of being Mary Magdalene in a past life, and they're all simultaneously experiencing this past life. Like 50 people can be Mary Magdalene, and 100 people can be lived a past life of Jesus Christ and Moses and Saint Germain, and like all these prominent historical figures. Well, my theory is that whenever you pass away, your consciousness is like then fractalized, right? And then whenever you're born, if reincarnation is real and you're born back into this reality, then you get a bunch of different people's fractalized consciousness. So you can have as many fractalized consciousness that was broken off from the whole whenever that person died on you. So then you have your base consciousness, and then you can have several other fractalized consciousness. And then whenever you die again, all those fractalized consciousnesses like fall off. And then when you're reborn, you get a new set of fractalized consciousness. I might be super woo-woo, but I mean, it would make sense if you are under the impression and if you're 100% convinced that all these people are telling the truth, right? That all of them did have past lives as Mother Mary or Jesus Christ. It would explain how they all would have these memories, is because it's not the whole memory, it's a fractalized memory.
Sure. Well, that, and you would also assume that based on how many people we estimate to have ever lived on planet Earth, more than likely you would not have been Mother Mary. More than likely you would not have been Jesus or any of these other characters. You would have probably been a peasant who died in the field. You would have been slaughtered by Stalin, or you would have been killed by some warlord, or you would have starved to death, trying to get some food in the woods. You would have been killed by an animal. More than likely, like substantially more than likely, you weren't any of those things. But I think that a lot of people that claim those types of past lives are actually, in my opinion, I think it's like the Messiah complex, which is kind of like what you said, I think, in a way, in regard to Jim Carrey playing Andy Kaufman. He really became him. That's different because that's acting. But some people truly believe that they're the Messiah, and they are so delusional. I mean, they really believe it, right? So same thing with people like Corey Goode. I mean, I honestly think he's delusional, and I think he actually thinks that he went to space and did all this stuff, and maybe not originally, but people believed him, and he kept doubling down, tripling down, and he got to the point where it was just like he became that character that he created. I don't know the whole background, but he became that thing. And even when you try to point out to people, hey, he admitted that he made all this space travel stuff up, they said, well, one person told me at a conference in Las Vegas, well, he actually believed he went, so that means he did actually go to space. Even though he didn't physically go, he remembered going, he imagined going, so it actually happened to him, which I think is the definition of delusion. But it's part of like the Messiah complex where you really believe it. And I mean, I think the same thing could be said for past lives. Like if you really believe that you were this person, then it doesn't really matter what anybody else says. Like that becomes your reality. And I don't mean that in kind of a loose, fanciful way where like anything you believe can manifest. I just mean like if you really believe it, that you can become Andy Kaufman, you can become the Messiah, you can become whatever it is that you believe. That doesn't mean that you actually are that person, obviously, or you actually live that past life, but you can believe you're Nikola Tesla. I just think that's I think that's probably pretty obvious to all of the listeners, whether, your point about fractional consciousness, which I like that idea, or genetic memory, which I think is kind of part of the same idea of fractional consciousness, although consciousness and DNA are different, obviously. It could also be not so much genetic memory in the sense that certain genes, like from the beginning when you're 10 years old or younger and you remember these things, it could be that certain conditions in your environment trigger those memories, which is, again, I think I mentioned that earlier. Like you go to, I don't know, you're 12 years old. You'd never really had much of an interest in planes, but your dad's like, let's go to the Aerospace Museum. And you go and you see some planes and you're reminded of a quote unquote past life. And it might not be that you live that life, but maybe there's something that you heard when you were younger about your grandpa being in the Air Force, and like all these memories come together and you start believing that. It also depends on who your parents are, because some parents really, really brainwash their kids really good with some nonsense and some garbage. So, I mean, that could certainly contribute to it. I mean, there's so many factors. And I think they all need to be looked at, because I don't think, like with everything else, Ryder, I don't think it's like a black and white issue. It's like with UFOs. It's not a matter of, do you believe in UFOs? Well, it's not a matter of what I believe. It's a matter of what the evidence says. And there's a tremendous amount of evidence for and against each individual case. Same thing with past lives and reincarnation. I mean, it is factual that reincarnation is a philosophical and, let's say, loosely defined religious principle historically, and that scientists today and psychologists today might be able to better understand it than our ancestors did, because we have machines and different forms of technology that can help us to do that, new theories on how the mind works and all this. But I don't know, generally speaking, I don't think it's that easy. And I think all these avenues of what we're discussing here on the show this evening, I think all these avenues are really important. It's not a matter of belief, and it's not a matter of breaking it down along those very polarizing lines. I think it's probably all the things we've said and a lot more. I'm sure your listeners have some ideas too. I'm sure all of it is, well, I know all of it is just as relevant. Some things might be a little bit out there, but I think all of it's relevant to discuss, because, ultimately nobody knows. If we knew for sure, then the conversation would be over.
Yeah, if anybody has any thoughts or ideas on what's going on, drop it in the comment section of this video. If you think that you've had a past life experience, drop it in the comment. I would like to hear about it, because I think it's really interesting. But I wouldn't underestimate the power of belief, though. It's kind of like in the Matrix movies, right? Neo didn't believe that he was the one. So when he went to the Oracle told him that he wasn't the one, and that anybody could be the one. And it wasn't until he believed that he was the one that he became the one. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think that belief plays a big part in a lot of things in our reality. I think the belief is how people manifest things in their reality, and repeating the same things over and over again until you get them down, until you get them to the point where you can do it flawlessly, and repeat the same thing over and over again. I mean, I think belief is the basis of manifestation. And I think that there's a lot of good hard evidence to manifestation, and that might sound woo-woo or new agey, but it's been a lot of people talk. I mean, Jim Carrey being one of them. He did that. He put a check in his wallet of $1 million signed to himself.
Well, when you believing something and manifesting it, I think a lot of people, and I used to be one of those people, I would think that it meant literal physical, like manifestation. Like, okay, right. I want a gold bar. Oop, there's a gold bar. I mean, obviously should be obvious. Not how it works. It's more so like what you believe, and it's a lot of the unconscious, probably in the subconscious. It's a lot of what you expect to see. The mind fills in the blanks, and so that's what your reality becomes. I think that's what it means, which also, I think, means that just because you have a positive outlook on something consciously doesn't mean that it's going to be a positive outcome. And I think living like that can be really disastrous, because eventually you're going to absorb so much of this. Yay, it's going to be great, and then it's not great. You're going to sort of develop this very negative, background noise, if you will. But I think that the whole subject of things like reincarnation and past lives, genetic memory, intuition, deja vu. Maybe I'm just not smart enough. Possible. I have no idea. Or it could be that there are things, and I think the UFO phenomena falls into this as well, Ryder. There might be things that are just literally outside the scope of our ability to understand, not because we're stupid or because we don't have the right technology. Some things might be because we're stupid or we don't have the right technology. We learn, we develop things, and then we can understand from that point on. But there might be some things that are just beyond the scope of our understanding. I mean, if you even look at the people that are developing artificial intelligence or AI systems, there's people at MIT that say they have no idea how they developed it. It's just like they're basically manifesting it. They're just creating something and then it just develops into its own thing. Like they don't even know how they're making it. I mean, I think it's the same. That's the same way with a lot of things. I mean, even writing. Like I've written more than 5 books, but I've only published 5 books. I honestly have no idea how I wrote those books. I go back and I look at those. I'm like, was that me? Like I've thought about it from the point of view of channeling. I'm like, did I channel that? I have no idea how I wrote that. No idea. I don't even remember writing half the stuff when I go back and read it, which also plays into my point about, you know, a little 10-year-old boy might have those memories, and it might be literal that he literally was this Hollywood agent, the story you reference. Maybe he doesn't remember some details because, you know, even in this life, I don't remember the details. Sometimes I have to think back, like, what did I talk about last week on the show? Most people would probably assume I remember all my shows. I don't. So the same thing with you. Like, you probably don't remember all your shows. So yeah, belief is a really important factor in all of this stuff. And yeah, my point was in regard to manifestation is it's obviously not like, oh, I manifested something right now in my hand. It's a matter of how you look at the world. And I'll give you another quick example. Same thing with UFOs. The same thing with like Mariana apparitions. I grew up in St. Pete, Florida, and I remember going to Clearwater when there was that Mariana apparition on the building back in like the late 90s. And I really, really vividly remember going to that. And some people saw the Virgin Mary. Some people saw a water stain. Some people saw nothing at all. You know, and all 3 of the people that would think it's Mary, it's a water stain, it's nothing, they're all right at the same time, but they're all wrong based on other people. But there is still something there. We're just arguing over how to define it, and maybe that's the problem with how we view the supernatural and the paranormal. Maybe that's the problem with how we view UFOs and past lives, is that we're arguing over how to define these things. Like, is it an alien spaceship? Is it a government drone? You know, is he really Nikola Tesla? Maybe that's not the right question to ask. You know what I mean? Maybe trying to define it along very polarizing terms, or like our perceptions of our little echo chambers, what we want to believe. Maybe that's not the right way to look at it. Maybe we should be trying to think, philosophizing on new ways to think about it, and then maybe we could understand it better. Just a thought.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that there's a difference between people that excuse me, automatically remember their past lives or remember a past life from the moment that they're really young, and then people that get regressed, right? Because I think regression is a bunch of nonsense, especially when it comes to past life regression, alien abduction regression. It's like, if you're not remembering it like off the top of your head, then did it really happen? Right? That's the whole thing with regression. And regression was never meant to be used to figure out if you were abducted by aliens. It was never meant to figure out if you had a past life, or to figure out a past life. You know, it was the original therapeutic version of what a regression is supposed to do. Is supposed to heal you from like addictions. It's supposed to help you quit smoking. Like there's a therapeutic, actual psychological effect of regressions. It's not actually to go back and revisit some memory that you think that you have forgotten. It's like if you go to an alien regressionist or an abduction regressionist, and you're already thinking that you've been abducted by aliens, and then you go to the alien abductionist and regressionist, what are you going to get? You're going to get, they're going to tell you that you were abducted by aliens. You know? Well, and if you go to a past life regressionist, it's their job to find out if you had whatever your past life was. That's what you're paying them to do, you know? Just
like ghost hunters. I mean, there is a caveat there, I think, that in some cases, well, we know in psychological terms, like if you're in a car wreck or you've been sexually abused or something, your mind like shuts that memory off. So regression might have some kind of beneficial effect if it's like in a neutral setting. Because if you are going into it thinking like, well, for example, I would put money on it when we go to this conference at the end of this month, Ryder, there's probably going to be people like that there be like, come get your, abduction regression here in this little booth with the car window blocker wrapped around the lawn chair, and we can regress you right here on the spot. Like, I think that's 99.99999% of the time nonsense. I will also, I'll disagree with you. Regression is real because I'd say the ufological community has regressed itself pretty good in the last 10 to 15 years. They've gone back to the very beginning, embryonic stages.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just like I would take the stories of like the one that I just pulled up here way more seriously than a regression, past life remembrance, right? If the and that's the problem, is that very few abductees, like supposed alien abductees, actually even remember the event offhand. They blame that on the alien mind control wiping device.
So
Right?
then, but wouldn't that mean the same thing is happening without the alien mind wiping device? The same thing is happening when you dream. I had a dream last night. It was really vivid, and I remember like 2% of it, and I know there was more to it, but I can't remember it. Does that mean I was abducted last night? It's like, no, because you're shifting between this unconscious dream state and then conscious waking reality. And the line between the two gets blurred when you're really tired and when you're in that state of I'm awake, I'm asleep, I'm half awake, I'm half asleep. But I don't remember my dreams. Most of us don't remember our dreams. And that's, I think there's a really really good correlation between things like UFO abductions, even past lives, and dreams. You don't really remember any of the details. It's a really small percentage. And until you start looking at it and you start putting some skin on the skeleton, does it start to take shape? And that can, of course, be formed by your perceptions of reality, what you believe. And I also think with these kids, in the same regard, I wondered, like, I've always thought this. I've thought, if I was in like a relationship with a woman who was as obsessed about this stuff behind me as I am, and like just completely obsessed with everything, I wonder, like, if we had a kid, how would that kid turn out? Would they just like divorce us as parents by the time they were 15 and move out? Or would they be totally obsessed with it too? Would they be seeing aliens? Not that I am, but like, would they be seeing aliens? Like, how influential would this be, this kind of lifestyle, on a child? As well, not that it's bad, but just like constantly absorbing and learning things can sometimes be worse than just going and sitting outside in the sun. So I'm thinking
They
maybe
would probably rebel. They would probably rebel immediately.
They'd probably rebel and start Skeptic magazine. It's I think with parents, like, we don't know the context of those stories. I mean, the parents might be like, well, Junior just came in one day and he said he was he was a Hollywood agent, he was Air Force, he was this, he was that, he was a chimney sweep, he was a king. Maybe some parents just let their kids believe whatever. I mean, look at what happens in schools today. If you think you're a cat, you're a cat. If you think that you're a girl, you're a girl, and a boy. And psychologists, they call it gender affirming care. They encourage that belief system. We don't even have to get political about it, but it's just a matter of, like, when that's encouraged, whether it's directly or indirectly, we don't know what entertainment this kid's consuming. We don't know, what access he has to things on the internet. Like, I don't have an ability to think back to when I was 10 and wonder, like, because I didn't have the internet when I was 10, or it was just in its infancy. I wouldn't have known what to do. Like, I can't imagine a world where like, what would a 10-year-old do with all the technology we have today? There's like 10-year-olds with more knowledge of phones and computers than I have. So it's hard to kind of put that into perspective, that a 10-year-old who would have been born in 2014, the kind of access to information they have, and the kinds of crazy parents that we have in the world today. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if kids claimed that. I mean, you see how, I'm not saying this kid's abused by any means. It's an interesting story. But if a kid's really abused, like, they'll create stories to make it seem like, it makes sense, or to make it seem like, their parents really aren't the ones abusing them. Like, there's a whole mountain of psychological literature on how kids think and how they react to certain situations. And as you get older, that changes. But my point is, like, We don't know how the parents are. The parents could be totally obsessed with this stuff. They could have a bookshelf full of reincarnation books and could be reading reincarnation bedtime stories every night. Who knows? I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying like that's highly plausible in a lot of these cases.
I think so too. And yeah, hippie chick. Yeah, that's. I think
Yeah.
those are the most interesting cases as well. And they are really rare, but I think those are the most plausibly real ones than going back and being a full-blown adult or being over 18 and going to get a regression because you heard someone talk about past lives online, and then you went to a past life regressionist, and then all of a sudden you're remembering all these past lives.
Well, yes, and remember in 2004 with the kid that said he went to heaven and back? Maybe he still did, but he later said that no, I thought it would get me attention. It wasn't real. But oh man, the Christians, because I grew up in a Christian household. Man, the Christians were all over. This kid remembers going to heaven. Heaven's real. You're going to go to hell, you sinner. And it turns out the kid just made it up. And then people are like, no, he didn't make it up. That's just what the devil wants you to think. So it doesn't matter what the situation is. People are going to believe whatever they want to believe. But that's a case in point. A young kid, I went to heaven. I think this kid was on TV. They had cameras on him. He's got books and interviews, but it turns out he made it all up. Or did he? Who knows? But it's just a great
No one
example.
knows.
No one has any idea.
Yeah, there's several of those. Like I remember books back in the early 2000s of like, I think one was titled like 30 Minutes in Heaven, and then there was another one, 30 Minutes in Hell, or something like that, or 30 Seconds. And do you remember those?
30 seconds in hell. That was the last time I listened to Jimmy Church's show. I don't remember those though. No, I don't.
Favorite part of the show is when it fades to black. It's 90 it's 90 minutes in heaven. 90 minutes in heaven, and then there's another one that's
sounds like some kind of like party sexual game. 7 minutes in heaven, 90 minutes in heaven.
Yeah, this is it here. 90 Minutes in Heaven, a true story of death and life. It was in the early 2000s. Dang, I got a good memory, dude, and freaking killing.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
Nailed it. And then there's another one.
I'll trust if you have these past life experiences. Your memory is really good. Maybe you'll remember what happened in a past life.
I do think I have a pretty solid, good memory, but there's another one too. I think they did like a dichotomy version. They did a 90 minutes in heaven and then 90 minutes in hell, I think. 23 minutes in hell. That's a different one right there. So you got to change the minutes up on that.
I like the Corey Good one, 4 hours in deposition. That's my favorite.
Here's the 23 minutes in hell. One man's story about what he saw, heard, and felt.
Oh, I remember that. I remember that one. Yeah, now that you bring that up, I remember that. But you see, those are the kinds of things like if you study altered states of consciousness just very lightly, you don't have to be an expert on them. But if you study any kind of altered state of consciousness, people that do different forms of drugs see and hear and experience different things, right? What's one of the most common thing people see when they're taking something like DMT or ayahuasca? They see the little people, they see gardens, they see things that remind you of the Garden of Eden. They see snakes on trees and the serpent or ayahuasca woman. If you're a Christian and you took DMT, you might think this is the Garden of Eden. And I'm not talking just about belief. It's just a matter of how you perceive the world. Because if you go, like for me, if I go to a grocery store and I see that some produce is on sale, it's a great day for me. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to save some money on these oranges. Other people, they go in looking for a bar of chocolate or a bag of chips, and they're not looking at the oranges. Like they just pass it right by. We have a totally different experience in the same exact space. As a silly example, or like if you're at a sporting event or a concert, wherever you sit, you're watching the same thing, but you have a different experience. It's another silly example, but I think it's the same thing when it comes to those kinds of experiences. Well, I went to heaven. Well, I went to hell. I was on an alien spaceship. I went to the moon and came back. I call it the 420 and back. These things are just the way that we perceive the world based on our perceptions, belief systems, and more complicated things that are for smarter people than I.
Yeah, I mean, everything is really dictated by the way that you were raised, your parents, your experiences of childhood, and your experiences of life is creates and formats your perception of reality. But some people can come in and break that type of like programming and go down a different route. And I feel like
Sure.
that I've done that. But that's what people think that the deja vu is that deja vu is like you possibly going down a different route, or like maybe if you haven't experienced deja vu in a really long time, that means that you're on a good positive timeline. I think it's either way. People
You can
switch
look at
back
it
and
either
forth
way.
with
Yeah.
it. They're like, oh well, if you're experiencing deja vu all the time, then that means that you're on the prime timeline, prime time for the timeline. And but if you're not, then it may mean that you're on a bad timeline. But I haven't experienced deja vu in a really long time, and I tend to believe that that means that I'm on the that I made some kind of good diversion from where things were headed.
That's funny because I have deja vu. I've had probably 2 or 3 this year, and that always makes me think, oh, this makes me think that I'm on the right path. It's just the opposite. By the way, when I read, I can't remember the woman's name. I think Margaret Cheney was her name. Her last name's Cheney, but she wrote a book on Nikola Tesla, and it was used to make a documentary. I think that aired on PBS or something a long time ago. It was a really interesting book on Nikola Tesla. And I'm bringing this up real quick because when I read that book, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, I didn't literally think I was Nikola Tesla, but reading through it, all the things that she documents about Tesla, about how he didn't want his food to touch and he was kind of a loner, and all the things she talked about, I'm thinking, that's me. That's me. That's me. I didn't like my food to touch. I'm kind of a loner. I always had trouble getting girlfriends, just like Nikola Tesla. I didn't actually think I was an electrical genius, but I was thinking like, huh. So I can imagine outside of that, Ryder, that someone who is delusional, and I don't even mean that as an insult, but someone who is a little delusional could read about somebody like, who does David Wilcock say he is? Edgar Casey. Could read about Edgar Casey, and because of some picture that you have on the internet, be like, oh, that looks like me. I must be Edgar Casey. It's like, I feel like I'm a pretty rational person. I read that book on Nikola Tesla. I have a lot of character traits with that guy, but that doesn't mean I'm Nikola Tesla. But if I really wanted to believe it, I could see how my mind could go there pretty easily. And I'll give you one other example. When I was a kid, I had sleep paralysis, and I would never write a book on this because I can't prove it, and I don't really care to prove it. I don't have a horse in the race. But I remember seeing little creatures that were kind of like, I don't know how to describe them except to say like gray aliens. I don't know what it was. I don't really honestly even care to know what it was or to even have much of a discussion on it. But if I really wanted to sell that, I could, market it in the right way and be like, my experience with 4 gray aliens. It's just, it's a matter of what you believe. It's also a matter of how you choose to perceive the world and how you choose to proceed with it. Because I think that there are people that have far more relevant and even documentable experiences that just don't talk about them. And there are people that want to get famous, or they want the publicity. I mean, because honestly, I mean, it's okay. I mean, I would say it's not a big deal if your kid says he's like a Hollywood agent, but to take a 10-year-old and put them in the media like that, like, I don't know if that's really good parenting. It might be like the parents trying to get some attention too. So just a separate thought. People that really do have experiences, like people that actually think that they're in the wrong body, separate issue, usually don't go around talking about it a lot. It's usually something you keep inside, like your traumas and the other things you go through. Because I've had alien experiences, I've had weird experiences, but I'm not trying to sell them, so I'm zip lip about it.
Yeah, and I have too, and that's the thing, is like there's nothing that anybody can tell me about my experience because I was the only one that experienced it. Like you can't tell me what I experienced, and that's what people try and do though. Like they try and relate their experience to your experience, and then that gets all jumbled up into an amazing conspiracy burrito that I call it. It turns into something that it never was in the first place, and pretty soon you'll be believing that something that never even happened in the first place. That's why I really don't talk. I mean, I've spoken a few times about my experiences, and I also had an experience with seeing a UFO in my backyard, and I have it on video. I've shown it one time on the show, and that was with Chris Allbeck, the very first time I ever brought him on, because we were talking about saucers and what Kenneth Arnold had seen or not seen. Mm-hmm. But I probably could have went really far with that footage. I could have sent it to all the big UFO shows and all the big people, because it's 100% real. It was filmed with night vision goggles in my backyard, and I seen it as it was happening.
Can you bring those to that? Can you bring those to the event? You still have them?
Yeah, I still have the footage. Yeah.
No, I'm at night vision.
No, I don't. It was a friend's night vision goggles that was at my house at the time. We had like a little get together, a little gathering, and she had the night vision goggles and whipped them out. And I was like, let me take a little scan. And I took a scan. I saw this weird white boomerang object that was just floating through the sky. And I tracked it as long as I could. And I was telling everyone that I was seeing it as I was filming it. I was like, I'm getting something, looks like a boomerang. It's weird. It's huge. Really big.
You'll have to show that to me sometime.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. And I could have went like all over with that, because I think it's truly unexplainable. Like, no one's been able to tell me what that is. It's obviously not a bird. It's way too big to be a bird. It's like pure white. It's just like a giant boomerang in the sky. It's like going right across the sky. And I follow it until I can't follow it anymore. The video is like a minute and 30 seconds. So it's not like one of those ones that's like 8-second little stupid clip. You know, it's legitimately as long as I could until it faded in behind the trees. But you know, and it could have been a big deal
until it faded to black. So you know, I can save you some time. If you'd have taken that to the media, it would have been handled like this. One group of people would have said, "Well, it's not really a boomerang. It's a hair on the lens." And the other group would have said, "It's a galactic spaceship, and I've been able to channel the aliens on board." That's how it would have been viewed. So I just saved you years of ridicule.
Yes, I remote viewed the alien aboard this footage, and it turns out that it was the Galactic Federation of Brotherhood 33 Confederation of Planets.
They're here. Yeah, the Galactic Federation. I sent you that article from the Hollywood Reporter. Did you get it about the kid?
Yes, I did. I'm gonna bring it up right now.
It's a great headline.
Boy who came back from heaven says he made it all up. I thought it would get me attention.
That's the Corey Good headline. Man who said he went to the moon and came back, made it all up.
Made it all up. The boy who came back from heaven now says he didn't go to heaven at all, saying he concocted the New York Times best-selling lie to get attention. Well, he's already got all the money from it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was like crippled or something, wasn't he? I mean, come on, that's not that kid doing that. That's the parents doing that mostly. I can't even get a publisher to publish my books. Some kid who's handicapped can get a publisher to publish his books. It's the parents or the people they know. They abuse these kids, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they definitely talked him into it. It's almost like that case of that young girl that killed her mom with her boyfriend. Can't remember the name of the case, but
I saw a documentary on that. Yeah,
where her mom made her out to be like she was like really sick, and that she had all these problems. Munchausen syndrome. That's what she did to her kid, and then she ended up killing. I think she might be out of prison now. I can't remember her name. I have to look it up, but that's what it kind of reminds me of, and definitely these parents are influencing their children on some level. Now, I don't know about this 10-year-old boy that this Dr. Jim Tucker
and I don't
talking about, because I don't know too much more about the case. I just found it when I was looking for the old case of the boy that had the experience and then went and met his past wife in the future as a newly born child.
That's some stuff right there. Well, I don't know likewise about this kid. And again, I'm just giving alternative ways of looking at it.
Gypsy Rose.
Gypsy Rose, yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
That's
Munchausen by proxy.
That's right. Yeah, that's a wild story. They had her mom had everyone fooled, dude. Everyone had the media fooled, her friends fooled, her family fooled, and she could walk the entire time. They had her getting all these weird surgeries and had a freaking feeding tube in her for a period of time when she was perfectly healthy. It's wild.
Some serious abuse, and I actually think that's kind of what's going on with Greta Thunberg, but that's a whole nother show. Anyway, I wanted to mention that all the people that you have pop up down there at the bottom saying things, I wanted just to thank all of them for those who said that they enjoyed my show. They were coming up too quick and going away too quick for me to say something, but thank you so much if you listen to my show. I appreciate it.
Yes, and thanks everyone in the chat. Really appreciate it, guys. You guys are keeping the show alive. Please share it out, and please leave a comment as well. And any of your experiences that you think that you had a past life on, or deja vu experiences, anything like that, please share that with us in the comment section of this video. Ryan, can you let people know where to find you online, my friend?
Yeah, pretty simple. One website, www.thesecretteachings.info. It has my books. It has my archive. It's all free, although there is a subscription service. And you can listen to the show Monday through Friday, groundzero.radio. And then the free show is published on that website, thesecretteachings.info. Last but not least, email rdgable@yahoo.com. And I'm sure we'll do another show before then, but Ryder and I, again, will be at Contact in the Desert coming up, the 29th through the beginning of June 30th through June 3rd.
Yes. Come through and see us at Contact in the Desert. Get your tickets now. On sale tickets. This link is in the description. If you use promo code EARTH10, you'll get 10% off that discounted price.
I tried Starseed. It didn't work for a discount.
Oh, Starseed. That would be a good one. You would think that would work. Or UFO 10, 10% off.
Yeah, UFO 10. Well, I just so people, like last year, people told me they didn't know what I looked like. This is what I look like. That's what Ryder looks like. So come and say hi.
Yep. Come check us out.
Yep. It'll be fun.
It's going to be a really fun time.
I'll be armed, so don't try anything, but otherwise it'll be good.
Hey, man, that might come in handy, dude. You never know. You get some wacky people at these. There was one guy last year that was wearing an entire tinfoiled out suit.
Not ironically, I assume. It was literally probably. Oh, I got the, I don't know if I should announce it. I don't know the tinfoil thing. I want to bring that tinfoil.
Yeah, you made them, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I didn't finish making them, but I got the stuff for them. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have crashed UFO parts at from a flying saucer.
I didn't make them, Ryder. I found them.
Found them. Sorry.
Sorry. I sealed them in plastic, so that they would be protected from the elements.
Plastic lamination that you found in the Sonoran Desert. Yes.
Yep. I'm gonna have UFO parts for sale. Not arts parts. That's trademark, I think, but. UFO and I'm gonna call it Lion Ryan's UFO parts.
Ryan and Ryan. Excuse me. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate you all. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel in the algorithms. Things are getting real wacky out there with these algorithms and the stupid community guideline stuff on all these different platforms. So please help out the show. Drop a thumbs up, drop a comment, share the show out. That's the way that we build the audience here. I mean, I've been losing subscribers every single day. I'm stuck at a certain point that it seems like I can't really grow up out of. So please share it in Facebook groups. And we are also back on Facebook as well. You can follow the show on Raised by Giants on Facebook. We go live there too on every show. And if you're listening to this on the audio only version, catch the show live on YouTube, Raised by Giants. And yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time this evening. Everyone in the chat, Noble Truth, Sam, Gesture, Scroll Sniper, Hippie Shake. Good to see you guys, and anybody else that contributed to the chat.
Thank
Nina,
you, everybody in the chat. Thank you so much.
Cheryl, and anybody that I may have missed. Appreciate each and every single one of you. You guys keep the show a roll. And so thanks, guys. And we'll see you guys next time. Have a good rest of your evening, wherever you are. Bye-bye.